All right, what is up, folks? Welcome back to another episode of the Help Me Understand podcast. I'm your host, Coach J.K. McLeod, and we are kicking off another fitness, nutrition, training adjacent episode. These typically come out on Tuesdays. However, and this is related to today's topic, with me traveling and getting my schedule a little bit shifted, this episode is coming out on Wednesday. So before we get into talking about some rules of the road trip, I'm going to share with you some tips and I don't know if hacks is the right word, just some things that I've put together over a number of years of longer-ish road trips and all that good stuff that I think potentially could help somebody else out there as you continue to try and build and maintain great foundational fitness habits. I first, as always, want to say thank you for choosing to press play on the Help Me Understand podcast. I know that you have a lot of different podcast content and otherwise content that you can consume. So truly never take it for granted that you chose to press play on Help Me Understand. So let's go ahead and get into today's episode. And this is coming straight from a few notes that I jotted down in preparation for today's episode. I do hope that you'll really stick with this particular one. I don't intend it to be one of the longer ones, like the 40-minute-ish ones. This will probably be right around the 20-minute range if I've got my timing correct. But one of the slight hesitations in the story that I'm telling myself here is that many times when I view content where someone is talking about, here are the five things that work for me, or really more from that angle of these are the things that work for me, they'll throw in this disclaimer of, now I'm not telling you that you have to do this, and then proceed to tell you why you should do all of these things. I tell myself this story of, hey, don't be a part of that, because regardless of how many times you're going to say, I'm not saying that you have to do this or anything like that, people are going to go ahead and do those particular things. And then as a coach who takes that role very seriously, certainly like to have fun. And also I think that the role of a coach brings a really solid amount of responsibility. I also understand that there's an amount of impact and influence that things have when coaches like myself will share these particular things. So the underlying piece here is I will do my best as I'm sharing each of these particular things that I've put together for myself. I'll do my best to try and share a quick piece of context into why I've put these particular pieces into place and why and what led to that, essentially. So let's go ahead and get into it, and maybe you'll understand a little bit more of what I just tried to explain, but may not have done so eloquently. So as we're getting into this again, these are rules of the road trip. So for some context, over the past about 2 to 3 years, I multiple times per year have made a 600-mile road trip from where we live in Illinois to where my parents live in Alabama. And that has been for a number of reasons. Most recently, it's based on our daughter, who's now going to be a sophomore in college, now attending school in the state of Alabama. Previous to that, my parents also reside in the state of Alabama. So my wife and I are, I believe, blessed that our daughter decided to pick a school that was about 70 miles, I want to say, from where my grandparents currently reside. So when we are on a trip like we currently are now, and we drive our way down, we can not only take care of assisting our daughter in moving back onto campus, or moving back into school, I should say. We can also double up, and I get to see my parents, daughter gets to see her grandparents, and my wife gets to see her in-laws. So it's like a win-win, win-win-win all the way around. That being said, that 600-mile drive each way is something that I've routinely done, again, multiple times per year over the past few years. Somewhat transparently, my dad was going through some medical issues recently, about a year or so ago. And so that during that particular time, I made this 600-mile road trip, again, each way 600 miles, multiple times within about a 3 to 4 month time frame. And then if you go back even further, just trying to give you some context on where I formulated these particular rules of the road, going back even further, about 10 years ago, I worked I would say I think that drive was about an hour and a half to 2 hours from where we permanently lived. So multiple times per week. I wouldn't always drive every time. Sometimes I would take the train and sometimes be gone for multiple days at a time. However, I would basically, we're essentially talking, I was traveling an hour and a half to 2 hours each way to work. Again, not every single day. Sometimes I'd go, stay there for 2 to 3 days, and then come back and all that stuff. I say all that to say that the information that I'm going to share with you about the systems that I've put in place for myself come from a number of years and miles of, we'll just call it like road tripping experience for all sorts of different reasons, whether it be for work, family, pleasure, or anywhere in between all three of those things. So these are some things that I jotted down and I tried to quickly categorize them. There are, let's see here, 6 things for the trip itself. And then I put together a little bonus of some things during the stay. Yeah, a few things there. So we'll go through these 6 things. I basically categorize them as things that I target doing before the trip, during the trip, and then after the trip. So let's start with the before, because why not? Everybody loves a before and after. There we go. All right. So before the trip, typically the morning of, I really put a pretty solid intention together of getting 20 minutes of movement in, whether that be a 20-minute workout that includes weights, whether it be 20 minutes of a cardio, which I'm usually not choosing that because that's usually not my first option, or 20 minutes of a walk, whatever the case may be. It's not capped at 20 minutes. However, just knowing that sometimes we may hit the road early, or sometimes it may be later in the day. I feel like for myself, 20 minutes is a reasonable amount of time for me to say, okay, I got in enough to feel like I was able to move my body with purpose and intention today. So with this particular trip that we're on, I went to the gym, walked on the treadmill for about 20 minutes, and then did some core work that took, I think, another about 15 to 20 minutes. And that was actually my planned workout for the day anyway. So it just worked out that way. Pardon the pun, worked out. But I would strongly recommend that if you are going to be someone who's traveling the majority of the day, especially if you're going to be sitting in a car or on a train or anything like that, getting in some sort of movement, exercise snacks, sometimes we'll call it, getting those in prior to that particular trip, I strongly recommend. Can't recommend that as highly enough, especially because you're going to be likely, no matter which way you're traveling, even if you're flying, you're going to be in a seated position, likely for an extended period of time. So definitely recommend get in 20 minutes or more of movement the morning of. All right. And then let's see here. One other thing for before. This one's more from the mental aspect of your foundations. Generally, when I talk about your fitness foundations, I talk about eat well, sleep enough, and exercise regularly, like those being the 3 really big fitness foundations. The underlying piece, as with anything really these days, is going to be the mindset that you have as you are going about these particular things. So I'm big on self-development. So one of the things that I will typically do before is have an idea of an audiobook that I'd like to listen to along the way. Now, here's the thing though, and this is where I will give some context around how I choose particular things. When I choose that audiobook, my intention is not that I'm going to listen to that audiobook all the way through. So basically what I'll do is I'll pick a particular audiobook for this particular book, for this particular trip. The book that I'm listening to is Scarcity Brain by Michael Easter. It's one that had been recommended to me by my former coach, Jeff, and then a friend of mine named Mark. Both of them, independent of each other, had reached out to me at different points in time just to say, hey, I think you might really dig this. And it popped into my head, let me go ahead and put that one on deck. I believe that it's about 9 hours long. So I have that turned on. I also listen to different podcasts and things like that. However, I think that especially when you've got a longer trip there and back, or however it may go, that's a great time to be able to finish a book from start all the way until the end. And the tactic that I utilize is I'll try to break up no more than 2 chapters at a time. So not listen to more than 2 chapters in a row, because typically in a 9-hour book, each chapter is probably in the 20, let's say average 30 minutes, because some of the ones I've listened to so far are 20, some are 40. I'll break that up with just a few songs or something like that. So basically it'll be listen to a chapter or two, and then just put on some music for probably about 20 minutes, maybe even 30 minutes. I do that for a couple of reasons. One, if especially as someone who prefers to just be the main driver, if we're going to be going on a long road trip, listening to one voice for that long can be low key a way to slowly like lull somebody to sleep, and nobody needs that to happen. And two, I have found that if I listen to a book all the way or attempt to listen to a book all the way through, it doesn't really allow me the time to really digest the information that I'm consuming. So I basically would just be listening to the book, and then it's like, well, I haven't really thought my way through different concepts that were brought up in the book. So that's another recommendation that I have for you. Grab an audiobook that you maybe have been putting off for a while, something that you're going to find helpful, useful, engaging, and then break every couple of chapters up, maybe even every chapter, but every couple of chapters up with some music along, so whatever it might be. Okay, so those are a couple of tips I have for you before you get on the road. Now, during the road trip itself, and this first one, I jotted down every gas station stop doesn't equal feeding time. So this is probably one of, if we were ranking the different habits that have changed over time that have been the most helpful, this is potentially the most helpful one. And it's a reminder for me, and hopefully a reminder for you, that there are going to come times in your life, like just throughout your life, where as you are working on building and maintaining, so once you believe that you've built a particular habit and maintaining that habit, there are going to be times where those habits are tested. There are going to be times where there's certain checkpoints to see, like, okay, do we have all of this stuff somewhat in check, within a reasonable range? There's just, I think about it as milestones along the way as you're looking to really figure out, okay, how solid are these habits right now? And the shift in not treating like, it's almost like Pavlov's dogs. Like, it was almost like whenever I would stop at a gas station, or whenever the plane would land, and it was going from one terminal to the next, or get to the airport and waiting in the terminal, or get to the train station. And if you've ever taken the Amtrak, there's always solid, for the most part, not at all stations, pretty solid options there. And then when you get on the train, there's always the food car, all those things. It was like Pavlov's dogs. You ring the bell. That was the time where, okay, well, that must mean we're at a gas station. That must mean that it's feeding time. I need to get something. And making that shift of that not being some sort of external signal that I need to then go grab a snack, probably one of the biggest shifts for real. And I can't put enough emphasis on that. I can recall so many times just this very mindless activity of get out, pump the gas, maybe lock the car while the gas is pumping, go inside, use the bathroom, and then just do that mindless stroll up and down the aisles of trying to figure out, okay, what, it's like the meme, like, I'm leaving here with something, like Denzel, I can't remember what movie he was in, but it's just like, yeah, I'm leaving here with something. And I believe that's a habit that I picked up as a kid, and it just never stopped. Kept doing it as an adult. Now, that is certainly not to say that, no, I never get anything from the gas station. That could not be further from the truth. What I'm talking about is being intentional about me just remembering I have control over the decisions that I make. So a gas station is not like a bat signal for I have to go ahead and get something here. I get to make those particular decisions. So if I want to grab a bottle of water instead of grabbing another energy drink, then cool. If I want to grab a pack of gum, then cool. If I want to go ahead and grab a bag of chips, then cool. I can grab a bag of chips. It's just that shift in those being automatic or automated behaviors. I had to rewire that particular system. It's almost like if you have something on auto pay and you've just consistently been paying the same amount no matter what. And it's like, well, wait, it looks like the cost has actually changed. I don't actually, my bill's lower. Why am I continuing to put all that over there? Let me reconfigure that auto pay. So I kind of think about it like that. Possibly a weird analogy, but hopefully it makes sense. So that's one habit or one rule of the road that I've got for you there. Just remember that every gas station stop does not have to equal feeding time. Another one, and this one is more just mindset related, more like just trying to be aware of the mental energy and really just trying to avoid negativity, I guess, and just try to stay as neutral as you can. Just remember that a traffic delay, rarely are traffic delays just for no reason whatsoever, whether it be construction or, God forbid, the majority of the ones that I tend to run into, especially traveling on this particular drive. So we'll go Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and then Alabama. There is at minimum one accident. It seems like at minimum one accident every time. So just remember that every delay that's happening while you are traveling is for some sort of a reason. And I'm a big believer that things happen for reasons. I know I've got other folks that would say, no, it's just that you look for a reason for that thing to have happened. And I'm not going to really argue with that, because I think that there's definitely times where I've thought that also. I've probably taken that approach. It's just, I've just been in too many, and that doesn't mean a lot. I've just been in enough situations where my viewpoint on delays, especially traffic and travel delays, has significantly shifted. And that change, I think, was most prevalent for me when there was a time a few years ago, and ironically, it was in Alabama. I think my mom was with me. I was driving my mom from one city to another. And that drive, I think, typically was supposed to take maybe about 2 hours. And I think it took us close to 4 hours. And along the way, I mean, multiple delays. And I believe, if I remember correctly, there were something like 3 accidents. And one of them was close to one of the worst looking accidents that I've ever seen before. And I've seen a lot. And I just remember at that moment being struck with, hey, we were kind of held up with being delayed at the gas station, just getting some things taken care of there. We were a little bit delayed with leaving the house that particular day. So there were things that delayed us. And I always think about that as I'm passing an accident. Man, if we had been 20 minutes earlier, 30 minutes earlier, what could the scenario have potentially been, especially when you drive up on like a fresh accident where it's just tough. So I won't belabor that particular point, but just a reminder that delays typically are going to be for a reason. So just try and maintain a level of gratitude as you continue to travel. All right, let's get back to more of the fitness and nutrition stuff. Another one with during the actual travel itself, try to pair your meals with fruits whenever possible. So as I mentioned, every gas station doesn't need to be a feeding stop. And also there are going to be times where I'm assuming you probably need to stop for food. So for myself, whenever we're making this particular drive, one of the stops that I gotta make it is stopping at Buc-ee's. And if you are from the Midwest/South, or you've driven through, like, if man, like you got to stop at Buc-ee's. Like, you just have to. Some folks I know have told me, like, dude, I cannot do it. It's just overstimulation. It's too much going on. I totally hear you. But if nothing other than for the fact that nobody sells gas as cheap as Buc-ee's, not legally that I know of. So when you stop at Buc-ee's, you got to grab a sandwich. There's beef, there's a brisket, there's smoked pulled pork, there's turkey, all sorts of different things. So I refuse to let go of grabbing a Buc-ee's turkey sandwich on my way down. However, what has shifted is that sandwich, that barbecue turkey sandwich doesn't always have to come with a bag of chips and some candy on the side. So a behavior that I've put in place is whenever possible, they always have some sort of fruit that's there, whether it be grapes, cantaloupe. Those are like the two main ones, like some pretty sizable fruit cups. So we're not talking like the real little tiny ones that you may typically see. Like these are some pretty sizable fruit cups, typically decently fresh and whatnot. So my other suggestion there is pair meals with fruits when possible. So instead of grabbing like burger and fries, it's burger and fruit, that sort of a thing. So that's something that I think can be really helpful, because one of the main things that I've noticed and also have heard from my clients as we've been working through ways for them to maintain things is the difficulty of trying to find fruits or vegetables as you travel. You might hit the occasional gas station or whatnot that might have like some really old bananas or some apples that look like they might not actually be apples. Like you're not sure if it's apple or just a red baseball, those sorts of things. I totally feel where you're coming from. So that also, if you're somebody who's a pre-planner and you do find yourself to get like really snacky, then bringing those things on the road with you, I think that's also a great idea. You may be thinking, well, why wouldn't you just pre-pack all this stuff? Or JK, why haven't you mentioned that as being part of your non-negotiables or rules of the road? I haven't mentioned that because it's not part of my non-negotiable rules of the road. Very frankly, it depends on whether or not I've planned really well for that particular trip. And I'll tell you what, for this particular one, I did not plan very well. And I'm okay with that. Literally packed like about 2 hours before. I mean, we're coming to stay at my parents' house. So I know the lay of the land. I know what's going to be here. I know that we've got access to laundry if I need it. So I'm not really too stressing too much over that one. Somebody out there who's a master planner for trips who uses like an Excel sheet is probably horrified right now. However, this is what I'm like. So I plan based on what I know. So that's what I would say again. When possible, just remember you can rethink pairing. So burger doesn't have to equal burger and fries. It can be burger and fruit, burger and some snacking type vegetables. All right. And then my last one that I have jotted down here, let's see. Yeah. Last one that I've got jotted down here is when you get to where you're going, when at all possible, try and take a short walk. So something that I didn't mention earlier, because I've gotten less consistent with this, just kind of depending on what's going on. If I'm traveling with other people, let me go back for a second. If I'm traveling with other people, I may or may not get a walk in while I'm at the gas station, like do a walk around the perimeter, because just based on if we're on a time crunch, that sort of a thing, then maybe not. If I'm traveling by myself, where I can go at the pace that I want to go at, that sort of a thing, then more likely than not, I am likely going to get out and do a perimeter walk. I mean, we're talking maybe 7 minutes at the most, sometimes just to get out and stretch and move. So I didn't mention that. However, what I do try to stay consistent with is after you get to where you're going, try and take a 10-minute or more walk. Just something to kind of clear your mind, especially if you've been the primary driver the majority of the time. It can really help you just kind of shift that mindset, or shift where your focus has been, because for the last however many 100 miles, you've been basically really focused on trying to, eyes on the road, keep everything, pay attention to what's happening in your periphery, all that good stuff. And so a good time to just kind of take some deep breaths. You've safely arrived where you are. A bonus, if you're like me and you just want to kind of take a few moments just to express gratitude for making it safely to your destination. So that's a big one for me too. Whenever you get to where you're going, just take a few minutes. 10 minutes is just kind of like my magic number. Take 10 minutes, go for a short walk. If you're going to a hotel, you're in a decent area, just try and walk around the parking lot, whatever it might be. Just try and just separate for just a little bit and then get right back into it. All right. And then these are just going to be some bonus ones. So this episode is going to go a little longer than I thought, but these are just some quick bonus things that I jotted down. And this is not for during the actual road trip itself. This is after you get to where you're going. And in my particular scenario, again, we're staying in a place that we're very comfortable with. We're staying at my parents' house. So I know for the most part what's already going to be here. I know that we've got access to pretty much everything that we would need, same stuff that we would have if we were at our own home. So we've got access to a refrigerator, a freezer, oven, microwave, air fryer, all that stuff we've got access to. So I make a quick trip to the store and I grab typically four things. I'll grab liquid egg whites because they're easy to just add to like oatmeal. I am also that weirdo who's completely fine like taking a quick swig and drinking liquid egg whites. I think it's like 3 tablespoons on average equals about 5 grams of protein. And that's something that I find to be helpful with getting my protein in. Ideally, prefer to get the majority of it in from more like actual meat and things like that. However, sometimes I'll travel with whey protein and sometimes I won't. And in this particular case, I didn't travel with it this time. I may pick some up while I'm here. However, if I'm looking at, spending $4 or $5 to get in 20 grams of protein from a ready to drink thing versus buying a half gallon or whatever it is of liquid egg whites that are going to last me for a few days and I can get a decent amount added here and there, then I'll do that. So liquid egg whites, also oatmeal packets, which those are pretty much in the house already. But if not, grabbing like the Quaker Oats packets. If you are someone who's like, I can't believe that you would endorse like instant oatmeal or whatnot, miss me with that whole thing. I try to keep things simple. So travel, even at home sometimes, I'm totally fine with it. So oatmeal packets, something that I add to my shopping list. Fruits, so typically apples for the most part. Grab apples, possibly like some sliced fruits like watermelon, honeydew, things like that. Because again, going to have access to a fridge so we can keep that nice and cold. And then last but certainly not least, again, if you're one of the folks who's like, can't believe you do like prepackaged or whatever it means, I get it. That's okay. Still love you, but miss me with all that. I will grab a couple of cans of vegetables. So canned corn, it's like an easy one for me. Canned green beans, or also frozen veggies. So I grabbed like a big steam bag of broccoli, throw that in the freezer. Those are going to make some really easy side pairings with other things. So typically with the way that our lifestyle rolls, like when we're traveling, it's typically a decent amount of eating out for the most part. We'll have probably one meal that's prepared at home. However, we just like to keep it pretty flexible. So there's probably going to be like pizza one night. There's a great peach cobbler place that we don't have near us where we live, and I like to go there when we come here. So I'm probably going to snag that. So I'll have my spots where I can get my treats in and things like that. And my goal is not to not do those things while I travel. My goal is to ensure that I'm still getting in deposits with things like protein, fruits, and veggies while I'm also here. Maybe it's in a different format than usual. However, I'm still getting those things in. So that's another thing that I would suggest is just grabbing like frozen veggies or canned veggies, whatever we'll keep in the area that you're staying in, just because it makes, again, some pretty easy side pairings. And then last, but certainly not least, a couple things. Try to walk after each meal. It just can help with kind of shifting to whatever your next activity is going to be, or kind of calling a close to that particular activity. I think especially during times of travel, especially when it's family and things like that, it can be really easy to, you had the meal and then the meal turns into the drink and then the drink turns into another drink and then it turns into dessert or whatever. Those things are all fantastic. It's just sometimes it starts with one thing and then it just becomes like this never ending thing. So it's almost like, it's not like at the restaurant where there's closing time and they're asking you to leave, like your meal is done. A lot of times, especially if you're staying with family or you're in an Airbnb or something like that, and everybody's kind of coming together, things can just kind of linger on for quite a while. So I think getting in a walk, easy way to just kind of call that particular time frame to a close before you move to the next activity. And it also gets some movement, and generally accepted that walking after a meal can help aid in the actual digestion of the food you just ate. So there's a plus too. Let's see. Also, just about done with the list here. I recommend the day after you've arrived where you need to arrive, try to drink more water than usual. And this is based on just my own experiences and also the experiences that I've worked through with others. If you've been on been traveling in the car for a long period of time, more likely than not, unless you are just really, really, really good at holding your pee, you probably have drank less water than usual on that particular day. So I'm not going to say just because it's my story that it's your story. I will say, though, it's just something that I've noticed. So in that particular case, then instead of trying to just like catch up with it that night when I arrive where we're going, then the next day I'll just get started a little bit earlier. I typically drink about 115-ish ounces of water is just kind of like my average. So I'll try and get more than that in. So bump that up, probably go more to like 165-ish. This is like give or take. So that's another tip that I've got. And then last tip is going to be still maintaining, and this is a very recent thing that we've been focused on in the fitness foundations community, still maintaining some particular sleep habits. So for myself, one of the things that I'm really focused on is trying to keep my last meal, snack, or drink, other than water, at least an hour or more before bedtime. Now, although I wasn't successful with that yesterday, today is a new day. So I'll give it a shot today and try and be intentional around that. So instead of it being about, well, avoid particular desserts or anything like that. It's more for me like, hey, I'm still going to have those things. Like I told you, it's a peach cobbler joint that I definitely plan to hit up. And also, I'm going to try and make sure that I've got that taken care of and then have some gap of at least an hour or so before then hitting the bed after that. For those who may be alcohol drinkers, I'm not one at this point, but for those who may be, that can be something that can be helpful as you travel and things like that too. Giving yourself a cutoff time, then switching over to water before you kind of call it a night. So, all right. As I said, that went on a little bit longer than I thought. However, again, big thing for me was trying to explain as much as I could some of the context into the process, the different things and experiences that have gone into me now creating these particular rules of the road trip, I call them. That might even be the title for myself, and then hopefully passing these on so they hopefully will be somewhat impactful, maybe spark some ideas for you, especially not just the specific, like, okay, he said to make sure I pair meals with fruits. So I'm going to make sure I pair meals with fruits. Like, I want you to think bigger than that. And I want you to really, my preference, here's the action step as we close out. My preference is that what you do is you take a tip like that, pair meals with fruits when possible. Well, did he mention why he does that? Well, because he knows there's going to be other times where it's all about the indulgence and all about the treats and things like that. And that it's like, do I want to waste those calories on like some chips from the gas station to go with that burger, or some fries to go with that burger, or would I rather put those calories towards like that bomb peach cobbler that I'm really, really looking forward to later? So that's really the thought process of, okay, it sounds like, oh, there's something I can relate to there. So how would I potentially be able to do that for myself? Like, what is my version of pairing certain things together? Like, what does that mean for me? So just wanted to throw that out there. So with that, thank you again, as always, for listening to another episode of the Help Me Understand podcast. I truly appreciate it. And if you have feedback, you know where to find me in the show notes, all my contact info. All right, take care. I'll talk to you next time.